There's a kind of memory that only comes back when you can smell it. Fried onions on a hot griddle, soft serve melting in a paper cup, the vinyl booth that stuck to the back of your legs when you slid across it in shorts. For a lot of us, growing up in America wasn't measured in years. It was measured in restaurants. The place your family stopped on every road trip. The spot where your Little League team went after the game. The counter where your dad ordered the same thing every single time. And then, one by one, they were gone. You drove past the building one day, and it was a bank or an empty lot with the signposts still standing. These are 10 restaurants that fed an entire generation of Americans and then disappeared. Every one of them felt permanent while it lasted. That's the part worth remembering. Let's count them down. Number 10. The Red Barn. You knew a red barn before you could even read the sign, because the building literally looked like a little red barn with a bright glass front. It started in Springfield, Ohio in 1961 and spread fast from 300 to 400 locations across 19 states, up into Canada, even out to Australia. They had the Big Barney, a double-decker that showed up years before you'd heard of a Big Mac, and the Barn Buster for the big appetites. So what happened? Nothing dramatic, and that's the sad part. The chain got bought by companies that only wanted the real estate. At the end, it was owned by the people behind Motel 6. They stopped advertising and let the franchise leases quietly run out. By around 1988, the barns just went dark. No scandal, no bankruptcy headline. America simply stopped being reminded they were there. Number 9. Horn and Hardart, the Automat. Before the drive-thru, before the Golden Arches, this is where America first learned to eat out. Horn and Hardart opened their first automat in Philadelphia in 1902 and brought it to Times Square in 1912. There were no waiters. You walked up to a wall of tiny glass windows, dropped your nickels into a slot, turned a chrome knob, and a little door popped open with a slice of pie behind it. To a kid in the 1930s, it was science fiction you could eat. At its peak, it ran about 165 locations, and it fed everyone, bankers and down-and-outers at the same marble counter for the same nickel. But the country moved to the suburbs, and the suburbs moved into cars. A restaurant with no parking lot and no drive-thru didn't fit the new America. The very last automat closed in New York in 1991, and an entire way of eating quietly came to an end. Number 8. Sambo's. At its height, this was one of the biggest coffee shop chains in the country, and today almost no one under 50 has heard of it. Sambo's started in Santa Barbara, California in 1957. The name came from its two founders, Sam Battistone and Newell Bonnet. By 1979, it had exploded to more than 1,100 restaurants across 47 states. But the name carried something the founders leaned into and could never outrun: the imagery of an old children's story that many Americans, rightly, found deeply offensive. Through the 70s, the protests and lawsuits grew, town by town. The company scrambled to rename locations, but the momentum was gone. By the end of 1981, Sambo's was bankrupt, a chain of over 1,000 restaurants, gone in barely 2 years. Number 7. Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor. If you had a birthday in America in the 1970s, there's a good chance you spent it here, getting embarrassed on purpose. Farrell's opened in Portland, Oregon in 1963, dressed up like an old-time parlor from the 1890s, with staff in candy-striped vests and straw hats, and a player piano banging in the corner. If it was your birthday, they'd stand you up, pound a giant drum, and announce it to the whole room. And then there was the Zoo, a mountain of ice cream so enormous it was carried out on an actual stretcher by 2 waiters while a siren wailed behind them. Nobody ever finished it. That was never the point. By the mid-70s, there were around 120 Farrells across the country. But tastes changed, costs climbed, and the loud theatrical parlor fell out of fashion. The final Farrells closed in 2019, taking one of the happiest rooms in American childhood with it. Number 6. Ponderosa and Bonanza. For millions of families, steak night didn't mean a fancy restaurant. It meant one of these two. They were budget steakhouses built on a simple, irresistible promise. A real steak, a baked potato, and a buffet you could hit as many times as you wanted, all for a price a family of 5 could actually afford. By 1989, the two chains together ran more than 1,300 locations. Then the country changed around them. Younger diners drifted to faster, fresher places. The buffet started to feel dated. A string of corporate owners and bankruptcies bled the chains through the 90s. Today, in 2026, there are only about 15 left in the entire United States. A giant of the American dinner table, reduced to a handful of rooms. Number 5. Chi-Chi's. This one didn't fade away. It was killed, almost overnight, by something nobody saw coming. Chi-Chi's was founded in 1975. One of its founders, a former Green Bay Packer named Max McGee. Through the 1980s and 1990s, it brought sit-down Mexican food to Middle America. Sizzling platters, fried ice cream, birthday sombreros, growing to more than 200 locations. The business was already struggling and had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in October of 2003. And then, in November, disaster. A Chi-Chi's near Pittsburgh became the source of the largest hepatitis A outbreak in American history, traced to contaminated green onions. At least 4 people died. Hundreds more fell ill. The brand's name turned radioactive overnight. Within months, the remaining restaurants were sold to Outback, and Chi-Chi's, as an American chain, simply ceased to exist. An entire company, erased by a single meal. Number 4. Steak and Ale. Here's the strange thing about this one. It may have died precisely because it won. Steak and Ale opened in Dallas in 1966, dreamed up by a young restaurateur named Norman Brinker. The idea was radical for its time. Take the steakhouse, which used to be expensive and stuffy, and make it warm and affordable and open to everybody, inside a cozy English inn setting of dark wood and candlelight. And it was here that America was introduced to something you now take completely for granted: the self-serve salad bar. It grew to nearly 280 locations, but its best ideas were too good to keep. Every casual chain in America copied the salad bar, copied the affordable steak, copied the whole formula, until Steak and Ale wasn't special anymore, just familiar. In 2008, its parent company filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy and closed the last of its restaurants. The place that gave America the salad bar couldn't survive in the world it helped create. Number 3. Bennigan's. This is the one that ended in a single, brutal morning. Bennigan's, another Norman Brinker creation, opened in 1976 and became the Friday night place. Irish pub theme, odds and ends nailed all over the walls, and that famous deep-fried powdered sugar Monte Cristo sandwich. Through the 80s, it grew to nearly 290 locations. For a whole generation, it was where you went after work, after the game, on a first date. And then, in July of 2008, with the recession closing in, its parent company filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy and shut down every company-owned Bennigan's on the very same day. No farewell, no going out of business sale. Employees showed up for their shifts and found the doors locked and the lights off. Around 150 restaurants, gone in a morning. If you loved a Bennigan's, you never got to say goodbye. You just drove past one day, and it was dark. Number 2. Burger Chef. You've been told your whole life that McDonald's invented the kids' meal. It didn't. This chain did, and almost nobody remembers. By 1972, Burger Chef had 1,200 locations, just 100 behind McDonald's, the number 2 burger chain in America. It flame-broiled its burgers. And years before the Happy Meal existed, Burger Chef gave kids the Fun Meal, a box covered in cartoons, riddles, and games, with a burger, fries, a drink, and a toy inside. Sound familiar? It should. McDonald's rolled out the Happy Meal soon after, and Burger Chef took them to court over it. But 2 things broke the chain. In 1978, a robbery at a Burger Chef in Speedway, Indiana, ended in the kidnapping and murder of 4 young employees, a tragedy that haunted the brand. And the business, sold off and mismanaged, never regained its footing. Hardee's bought it in 1982 and slowly erased the name. The last Burger Chef closed in 1996, while its own idea became the most famous meal in the world. Number 1. Howard Johnson's. And here it is. The biggest of them all. The one whose fall is almost impossible to believe. For a long stretch of the 1950s, 60s, and into the 70s, Howard Johnson's wasn't just a restaurant. It was the restaurant of America. You found it by the orange roof, glowing over the highway from a mile away. Inside were the fried clams and the legendary 28 flavors of ice cream. There were about 1,000 of them, coast to coast. And here is the number that should stop you cold. At its peak, Howard Johnson's outsold McDonald's, Burger King, and Kentucky Fried Chicken combined. So how does the king vanish? Slowly, and then all at once. Fast food outfasted them, with smaller menus, lower prices, quicker service. The founder's son cashed out in 1979, selling to a British conglomerate for $630 million. 6 years later, they gave up and sold it to Marriott for roughly half that. Each new owner understood the empire a little less than the last. The orange roofs came down, one after another, for 40 years. And in June of 2022, in Lake George, New York, the very last Howard Johnson's restaurant on Earth quietly closed its doors. 10 restaurants, 10 different endings, one killed by its name, one by an outbreak, one by owners who only wanted the parking lot, one by inventing the very thing that made it ordinary. But underneath all of it is the same quiet truth. None of these places thought they were dying. Every single one, at its peak, felt permanent, like it had always been there and always would be. The orange roof was supposed to be forever. That's the thing nobody tells you about the places that raise you. They don't announce their last day. There's just an ordinary afternoon when you're a kid, sitting in that booth with your family, and you have no idea it's one of the last times. You think you'll come back. And then 30 years go by, and the only place it still exists is inside your own head. So if there's a booth you still remember, a counter, a sign, a smell, tell me which one in the comments. Because as long as we remember these places, they're not completely gone. And if you want more stories of the giants that fell, subscribe and stick around. There are a lot more of them, and everyone deserves to be remembered.